Good morning, everyone. This is Stephanie Halko in the Department of State Treasurer. Hope you're all doing well this morning. I'm here with the Treasurer and Frank Lester and our communications team, and welcome to the call. Just want to go ahead and open it up to the Treasurer for some opening remarks, and then we'll take some questions.
Welcome and good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us on our March Ask Me Anything call. We got a lot of topics to go over, a lot of press releases that have been issued since we were last together. A few moments ago, we were at the Council of State meeting that I have the responsibility for attending once a month, and at the Council of State meeting, talked about the Connect NC bond and the fact that we are going to be looking toward this summer to issue the second tranche of the Connect NC bond that many of you are familiar with. But with that, I think we'll just start with questions. I know we're going to get questions about debt affordability study, about healthcare issues, merger issues, investment returns, and the like. So we'll go ahead and start with our panelists.
Okay. Who wants to go first with a question? Do we have somebody in the line?
I can go first.
Yeah, go ahead. Is this Rhea?
Yeah, hi.
Welcome.
Good morning.
Morning.
I actually wanted to ask whether there was any update on the CIO search, as well as an update on bringing more of the assets in-house with your new index, as well as the planned international equity index.
Thank you for joining us. Great question. On the CIO search, we have been meeting this week actually to get the job description more tailored to what our needs are going forward. Secondly, in the next few days, you'll be seeing us put out a press release that as of last week, we brought another $3 billion into the in-house passive index strategy.
Democratic turnout was also up over the same period from 2016, despite the fact that usually more voters
Sounds like somebody might need to mute their phone.
Hello?
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
And thirdly, there is no update about the overseas passive index product. We, as you know, we're looking but between now and the end of the year to have over $12 billion in-house in our index product that are domestic investments, but nothing new on the overseas piece.
Did you have a follow-up question?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Who else do we have on the line that has a question this morning?
This is Dan Way. I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Dan.
Given the collapse of the UNC Healthcare and Atrium Health situation and the concerns you raised there, just wondering how you're viewing the ECU-Vidant merger.
Great question, Dan. Actually, as treasurer, I started working on the ECU-Vidant merger before the UNC Carolinas Health System Atrium merger. We have been dealing with the UNC-Vidant, ECU-Vidant merger exactly the way that we dealt with the other, and that is, number one, understanding how it impacts the bonds that have previously been issued, and we have been working with bond counsel and to the extent of requiring, I think, a private letter ruling as far as what happens to those tax-free bonds. Secondly, we are, as with the other case, we're concerned about how it impacts the state employees who are currently working for ECU and not Vidant and would be part of the merged company. Lastly, because they are different but they're very similar, we are interested in what it does for healthcare costs in Eastern North Carolina. Obviously, when you have so many competitors, they're providing healthcare services in the Raleigh and some of the urban areas where UNC Healthcare do business as well as Atrium. That's a little different issue than the task of providing accessible and affordable healthcare to Eastern North, to Eastern North Carolina. So they do have a lot of similarities, but they're also very different. We never saw any of the details about the UNC Atrium merger, even to this day. So requiring them to get a private letter ruling as we're requiring from ECU Biden about how it impacts the pension plan and the tax exemptness of the pension plan, if that's the correct word, that's something else. So we've had a meeting, at least one meeting, with the principals at Biden and the principals at ECU, as well as the folks here from A, the local government commission, B, the pension plan and the health plan, to go over some of these issues.
Do you foresee taking action like the $1 billion performance bond that you requested for the UNC Atrium deal?
I wouldn't take that off the table, but it is a very different transaction because in the ECU Biden deal, they're acquiring the medical practices. But now that this other merger has been dissolved, we'll turn our attention. But regardless of what deal we're talking about, Dan, I repeat what I've said before, and you've been gracious to print. We're not in the business of NO. We're in the business of KNOW, and we need to make sure that this combination at ECU Biden does not affect the taxability of the state pension plan. Need to know how it impacts the bonds that have been previously issued and the money that taxpayers have already spent on those facilities in the past. And then, of course, how it impacts those employees who depend on the state of North Carolina for their health care as well as their pension benefit.
And so, you've raised the issue that the Council of State seems to be out of the loop on all this. Are you in any discussions with the governor at all about remedying that, and how would you propose going about fixing that void?
Well, I just left a Council of State meeting, as I said a moment ago, and I brought this issue up to the Council of State and basically told them that there were millions of dollars worth of taxpayer money that was spent on this dissolved merger. It had to do with attorneys and actuaries and accountants and consultants and a lot of other public relations firms. And I just, in the press release, I said, and I said this morning, Dan, the Council of State, we spend 30 seconds on the interest report that I give as treasurer. This morning we spent 30 seconds on the insurance report that report any damages for insurance purposes from Mike Halsey, the insurance commissioner. And the whole rest of the agenda of the Council of State is the buying and selling and otherwise disposing of state-owned assets. I don't know any larger state-owned asset than UNC Healthcare. And as I said in this meeting this morning, we're not trying to get in the way of what statute says. We're actually trying to honor statute. But we don't need a law to tell us what's right and what's wrong. And if people think of the Council of State as a governing body that at least reviews these kinds of things, then I think in the future these should be on the agenda, at least for review. It's not saying that I have a vote, don't have a vote, or the General Assembly has complete governance over this, or some board of directors outside of the Council of State. It just means that the citizens of this, taxpayers of this state, are looking to the Council of State when it comes to big issues like this.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ask the same question. I had trouble getting on the call this morning, so I missed your statement.
Yeah, no, that's, our doors and mine are always open to you, Dan. And but most people, a lot of folks don't know that there's a Council of State or what it does. And
right.
And we have a charter, and there's a part of that charter, and I can email that to you, that says that one purpose of the Council of State is for obviously the governor to set the agenda along with the secretary, who is the budget director, Charlie Peruse, but to set the agenda. But there is also a provision in that some of those charters with the Council of State that any member of the Council of State can bring up an issue for review at any time. So I just think there's no better way to be in the business of KNOW than to have things like that come ahead of time. These are not transactions where these stocks are publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange, and you got to be careful about information getting out and somebody trading on that knowledge. We're keepers of the public purse, and especially when it comes to maybe the largest asset that the taxpayers have paid for, which is UNC Healthcare, that we have to be in the business of the KNOW, and we have to inform the taxpayers when we find out things.
All right,
But to repeat, Dan, no one to my knowledge has ever seen the details of this merger between UNC and Atrium, including me. I have a 25-page deck here that was presented to me a couple of weeks ago, but there's really no details about the merger.
And do you feel you're going down the same road with ECU Vidant? I mean, are they being transparent in any way?
Yeah, I have this ECU Vidant deal is something that's been in the oven, so to speak, long before I became the treasurer, and I just have the responsibility of making sure that I'm listening to the lieutenants of the treasurer's office, the local government commission, the retirement services division, the state health plan, and to make sure that any questions that they have about ECU Vidant are being answered.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Does anyone else have a question for the treasurer?
Hi, Rose Tobin. Oh,
Go ahead, Rose. I'll jump in after you.
okay. Because I was going to follow up on what Dan said, but on that ECU Vidant thing, you were saying that you're listening to all your lieutenants, but what are they telling you? Are they getting the information that they need to assess what this merger would do?
Well, what they're telling me is what they're asking for, and we have not gotten specifically, what we're asking for, and that is, number one, a private letter ruling to make sure that if these employees are transferred or under the quote supervision, and I'm not an attorney, I apologize, under the supervision of some other entity, does that impact our tax exempt status? Not everybody on this phone call can be a part of the North Carolina pension plan because they're not a qualified employee. So all these words, as you know very well, have equity to them. And we need to make sure that somebody's not involved in a transaction that would violate the tax exempt status of the 26th largest pool of public money in the world. That's number one. Number two, they are trying to get together a communication piece so they can communicate with the employees of ECU Vidant to figure out, so they can tell them what their status is. And then number three, we have bond counsel working on the impact this has on taxpayer financed debt that the state of North Carolina has put its full faith and credit behind.
Okay. So those are the three things. And when did you ask for those?
Over the last few months.
Okay. So these are not small things. These are fairly heavy lifts. So it's not do you feel like they're stonewalling you, or is this just the wheels of everything grind slowly?
I don't know quite how to answer that. I'm going down there this week, and sometimes conflict occurs because nobody has asked the questions. And so what we're trying to do is we're just trying to set in motion the process to get the questions answered. I mean, the last thing I want to do at some point in the future is be on one of these calls with Ask Me Anything, and somebody says, well, Treasurer Folwell, how was it that the pension plan lost its tax exempt status? How'd that occur? We're trying to preempt some of this stuff to make sure it doesn't violate any of our constitutional and statutory responsibilities and duties.
Okay. There was someone else who wanted to go, and then I've got some questions for you. So
Sure, I'll jump in. This is Jason DeBruin with North Carolina Public Radio. I actually have another question to ask, but just sort of bouncing off what you just said. I mean, it seems to me a pretty big stretch that the pension would lose its tax exempt status. I mean, is that an actual concern of yours?
Well, it's a concern that's been expressed to me by lawyers and people that served under Treasurer Cowell. This is a question that's been, that comes up on many occasions. So I'll be glad to give you the chapter and verse of why this is a concern to them. This is a concern that did not start with me. This is a concern that started with the previous treasurer.
I'm not trying to lay blame on anyone. This is the first that I've even heard that this is a possibility. I mean, without going into too much detail maybe, but can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, what would cause the pension plan to lose its tax-exempt status?
By allowing participants in the plan that are not qualified under the rules of the Internal Revenue Service.
And you fear that that's a real possibility? I know, just for instance, under UNC, there are employees at Rex Healthcare, for instance, that are not, that don't have access to the state health plan or the public pension. So, I mean, it seems to be, in all things considered, a relatively easy fix if you're talking about joining ECU and Vidant or really any entity with a public entity.
It is an easy fix if they'll obtain a private letter ruling, which is a standard thing that people do every day. But just remember, I wasn't here for the UNC Rex, so I'm not as familiar as you are about the details. But here in this case, we're talking about state employees going to work for a private entity.
Right.
See, in UNC Rex, I don't know.
It was a little more the reverse, where you would have private employees come to work for the state entity.
That's exactly right. Good point. And I was just about to try to put a bow on that. You know, there's 30,000 employees at UNC Healthcare. We all agree with that number. There's only 14,000 employees at UNC Healthcare that are state employees. So you're exactly right. Now that you talked through it a little bit, this is the exact opposite transaction.
Right. In any event, that wasn't my intended question. The question that I had is related to investments in the firearm industry, be that either direct in terms of producers of firearms or indirectly in terms of really any other way that an investment could be made indirectly into a firearm company. Has there been any discussion at all whatsoever at the Treasurer's office about looking at those investments and potentially changing them, and that could be either way, to increase or decrease, given some of the public discourse about, following Parkland and a refreshed look, if you will, at firearms, gun control, et cetera?
Well, I would say that there's no words that I could add as a father or a human being that could express how distraught all of us are about what happened in Florida and has happened in other parts of the United States. I will tell you that the laws that we follow regarding what we would call divestiture of certain types of assets are laws that are passed by the General Assembly and signed by the governor. And I think we have maybe 2 or possibly 3 of those mandates currently with Sudan and other things. You're starting to see a lot of talk around these issues. We have not had any internal discussions about that.
Got it. And one other unrelated question. As economists generally agree that we are at somewhere in the later innings of a strong economic cycle, looking out ahead, knowing that obviously a pension fund like this is intended to last essentially forever, have there been any discussions or thoughts about changes in the investment portfolio over the next, call it 3, 5, 7 years, as many economists think that there might be a plateauing, say, in the stock market or even some sort of a market correction that might happen in the relative near-term future?
Great question. A couple of important rules in investment management is not lose money, and the second rule is not to lose money. We are in some respects, even though this is one of the 5 best funded pension plans in the United States, we're on an unsustainable course, and it's some is due to the blessed events of increased life expectancies. Some majorly due to the fact that interest rates are at all-time lows, and stock markets at all-time highs. So our asset allocation model, which is, I think, your specific question, has not changed than really what's been in existence for most of this century, actually. But we're constantly monitoring that. For example, our bond portfolio has 25, $30 billion in it, and all the folks on this call know that even though bonds pay off at a certain day and they pay you interest until that period of time, the value of that bond fluctuates between when you purchase it and when it matures based on what interest rates are doing. So our duration, which is the term we use, is used in the industry about how to measure how much risk you're taking on your bond portfolio. Our duration right now is about 7 years. That is a very conservative duration. And in addition to that, the next 2 or 3 distributions that will go out every 30 days to our pensioners will be taken out of our long-term bond portfolio to kind of reduce that duration a little bit more. So as far as the fixed income investments, we are making sure that we're keeping our duration in check, and that obviously we have the liquidity to pay these benefits. We're paying out over $500 million every 30 days when you combine the Elgers and the Teasers plan together. And lastly, more importantly, we're putting a renewed emphasis on the difference between investment allocation and investing. What that means is that on tens and tens of billions of dollars of assets in the pension plan, we commit capital to money managers, but in most instances, they have up to 4 years. In many instances, underscore many, in many instances they have up to 4 years to invest that money. So sometimes when you allocate the money to these investment managers, they don't invest in it immediately. And so we're trying to make sure that we have a handle on that. Obviously, anytime that we put 1 penny in an index fund, that goes to work immediately in index funds. But most of the alternative investments happen in the 4-year period. So we're doing cash flow modeling right now, and I'll wrap this answer up by telling you that we're also looking at the probability of hitting our assumed rate of return over the next 20 and 30 years. By the way, even though we're one of the 5 best funded pension plans in the United States, we have not, on average, hit the assumed rate of return over the last 20 years in our rearview mirror. There's less than a 50% chance of hitting that 7.2% return over the next 10 to 20 years, and we're making sure that we take all these ingredients into account as we figure out how to minimize the risk and maximize the return for the pensioners and the active employees and the taxpayers in North Carolina.
I know that the opinion of at least 2 board members would be to reduce that projected rate of return. Clearly, that has the effect of immediately showing the fund being more underfunded than current projections show. Is that something that you would have an appetite to do, or have there been discussions? Let me amend that. Have there been serious discussions towards amending and reducing that assumed rate of return?
Well, let me put a little more color on that. I'm the one who has taken the lead for the first time in 40 years to reduce the assumed rate of return. It's one of my first courses of action when I was sworn in as treasurer. I started prepping the board members about the need to do this, as well as the General Assembly, the League of Municipalities, and the County Commissioners Association. There are other folks that obviously have a piece of this pie, but those were the 3 main groups, because it's the most perverse mathematical thing that you'll hear today. The best funded plans have the most difficulty in lowering the assumed rate of return because of the increased funding associated with that. Now, why does that sound perverse? Because if your plan is 30% funded, that means you weren't funding it to start with. So you can lower the assumed rate of return down to anything you want to because you weren't doing what you're supposed to do anyway. So anytime mathematically, not politically or emotionally, but anytime mathematically, we lower the assumed rate of return by 5 basis points, 0.05, like what we just did last year from the 7.25 to 7.2, that is tens and tens of millions of dollars of increased appropriation that has to come from the General Assembly's budget as well as the local county commissioner and the city's budgets. So I'm the first treasurer to do that in 40 years. Now, why has that not been done in the past? Well, because no treasurer wants to show a pension plan that's less funded. I can make our pension plan 100% funded in 6 seconds just by raising the assumed rate of return. That's what happened in New Jersey yesterday. They lowered the assumed rate of return to 7%. They realized they couldn't handle the pressure of that on the pension plan itself. So now the new governor's raised the assumed rate of return again just to make the plan look better funded. It's trickery, in my opinion. So I'm the first treasurer in 40 years to lower it. We lowered it from 7.25 to 7.2. Over the next 7 weeks, you're going to see another proposal to lower it down to 7%. And the reason that's important to the people in this call is that these are things that Standard & Poor's and Fitch's and Moody's are looking at. When we were fortunate to be awarded again a AAA bond rating last year, Fitch's did not use my 7.2% assumed rate of return. They used 6. Standard & Poor's used something less than 5. So the rating agencies that give us these AAA bond ratings are not even using the number that we're putting out there. So I think it's all these challenges, and I'll go to the next question, all these challenges are estimable because we can estimate them. They're probable because people are working and people are going to retire, but I think they're solvable, and that's what we're doing by lowering the assumed rate of return, and I'm the one that's taking the lead on that.
Thanks. I'll jump back in line and let somebody else go.
Hi, this is Alex at WSAE. I just, we spoke last week and I wanted to follow up. You mentioned something to me about fewer dependents of state employees signing up for the health plan. I was just wondering if you had any more detail on or any way to quantify that.
Well, are you asking about the enrollment audit that we did last year, or specifically are you talking about our desire to get younger, healthier people in the state health plan?
So I just remember last time we spoke, you mentioned to me something about how fewer dependents of state employees were signing up for the state health plan.
Good.
So yeah.
Great question. Yeah, that's a decades-old historical problem. That we have one of the lowest participation rates of dependents in the state health plan than most other states. Now, I want to say this for the benefit of the entire audience, even though they may not be specifically interested in this. This merger, this combination to bring together the buying power of Berkshire Hathaway, JP Morgan, and Amazon, the domestic employment base of those 3 entities is about equal to the state health plan of North Carolina. So us taking advantage of our largeness is something that's what that announcement at Berkshire, JP, and Amazon was. We're already doing that. So, but we have not taken advantage of our largeness because our family premium this year is $700 a month. So if you're referring to a beginning teacher, trooper, or other state employee that based on a beginning salary, they may have to work 4 or 5 days out of every work month just to pay the family premium. So they're making that choice between food and healthcare, energy and healthcare, mortgage and healthcare, or all the other core functions of their life. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out how to make this plan less complex, more understandable, push the power down to the state employees so that they can be watchdogs, and then to make it sustainable. But I will say this, and I hope it comes across clearly. Nobody knows if we lower the family premium on the state health plan if we're going to get younger, healthier dependents. Nobody can tell you that. But that doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. Right now, our combined ratio on the folks who have families is 140%. That means that we lose $1 premium plus over 40 cents on everybody else that's a dependent. And the problem with that is that what that tells you is that the only people who are, most of the people that have dependents on the state health plan are people that are not able to do it cheaper outside the state health plan. As the largest purchaser of health care and pharmacy benefits in the state, we should be able to do it better and cheaper on behalf of state employees. We have seen an increase in dependents over just the last enrollment period in the state health plan. Now, the bottom line to this whole question is where do we go from here? And where we go from here is that we're going to take advantage of our largeness. We're going to sign our contracts and not other people's contracts. We think we're very optimistic, even though we have a $35 billion unfunded healthcare liability, that we're going to be able to continue to build reserves, focus on accessibility and affordability for healthcare for our state employees.
So just to follow up, do I understand correctly that you're looking into lowering family premiums, but you're just saying that there's no guarantee that more people will sign up if that is the case?
Right. I can go out and hire consultants and pay them tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to really tell me whatever I want to hear. We know instinctively that a lot of state employees do not have their dependents on the state health plan because they can do it cheaper elsewhere. And actually, you're talking to one of them for most of my children's lives. They were not on the state health plan because we could do it better and cheaper out as a separate policy for an 18 or 19-year-old. There's a lot of young, healthy people who could be customers of ours on the state health plan, and we need to make sure that we're have an opportunity to earn that business. And the only way that you can earn business generally is with price and quality, and that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
And tell me, if you want us to get you the actual numbers of how we've seen an increase in dependents, we'll be glad to get that to you before noon today. Yeah,
I really like that. Thank you.
Okay.
I would like that too. This is Rose Hoban from North Carolina Health News. I want to go back to some of the things that you and I spoke about a couple weeks ago that are sort of along the lines of the state health plan. For example, you were talking about the health insurance tax, the HIT. What's the status of that?
This is Rose, right? Right? Is this Rose?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Are you having trouble hearing me?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Those who know me know I have no problem doing this, what I'm about to describe to you, but it's nothing I would ever recommend for anyone else. The health insurance tax was in the freezer in 2017. So it was in the freezer. It was sunset. It was not being charged to me and people across the state and people across this country. We have made a big push all during 2017 with our congressional delegation, and then in the fall of 17 by actually sending a letter to President Trump asking him to sign an executive order to leave the tax in the freezer for 2018. If you go back to the original logic of this health insurance tax, it was hot-wired into Obamacare. It was probably 3 sentences of a 2,400-page document. And if you go back to the origin of why it was put in the freezer to start with, it's because they thought that there would be some comprehensive congressional action to deal with Obamacare, whether it's repeal, replace, make it better, whatever the case may be. But I don't think anyone in this room or on this call would ever, except probably me, take something out of the freezer, thaw it out, which is what's happening in 2018, and then in the continuing resolution, it's going back in the freezer for 2019. You don't do that. So our current push is going to be to leave it in the freezer for 2018. This is a $44 million hit to the state health plan. We are, the state of North Carolina, we are a tax exempt entity, and we're getting hit with a $44 million tax for the state health plan, mainly associated with our Medicare Advantage product. This is $399 million across the state of North Carolina. This is a $15 billion across the United States. And most people don't know that they're getting ready to get hit with this because it's a tax that's charged to you at the end of the year, sort of like your income tax is, so to speak. So we're going to make a big push over the next 6 weeks to get the health insurance tax left in the freezer for 2018. We can have a debate about 2019, but I don't know why you would take a tax put it in the freezer in 17, take it out of the freezer in 18, and put it back in the freezer for 2019. So we're going to continue pushing on the congressional delegation as well as communicating with the White House. I'm a little disappointed if I could have been a little bit more on top of my game and had an understanding the president was going to sign an executive order about 4 months ago, probably now, regarding some of these issues. I'm sure we could have had a conversation with his policymakers to put this in there, but I didn't know about the executive order until I saw the press conference. So we continue to work on it. Now this relates back to the earlier question that the reporter had. What do you do with $41 million? Well, that's how you were able to make a substantial difference in lowering family premiums. So there's all kinds of ways that we can go at this. We have to go at it by turning all these participants into watchdogs. We can go at it by signing our contracts and not other people's contracts. We can go at it by getting the health insurance tax repealed and put that money towards substantially reducing premiums for 2019. All this stuff has the potential of working, and that's where my optimism comes from. Rose, can you help me get it repealed?
Yes. Well, it'll go into the story, I'm sure, but I'm not sure how much power I've got with the administration. I'm sorry, with all of the, you've been tweaking the state health plan and turning dials here and there. How much do you think you're going to be able to wring out of the cost, like over the course of the year?
Well, I think most people would say that and unfortunately the term waste, fraud, and abuse is probably overused or used in ways it should be. I can tell you we have all three of those things. And there's all kinds of opinions about how much waste, fraud, and abuse there would be in the largest health plan in North Carolina, the largest purchaser of prescription drugs in North Carolina. In some respects, we focus on the hundreds of millions of dollars and the billions of dollars, but then sometimes we focus on the pennies and the paper clips. A 10% number, I think most people would find that to be extremely reasonable. As you can see from some of the press reports that have come out recently about what it costs just for elective surgeries at different quality medical facilities across North Carolina, take advantage of our medical tourism, where, as you know, we've already redesigned our state health plan card to say paid for by you and taxpayers like you. We are probably 2 months away from going public with our new explanation of benefits, which we're partnering with Blue Cross and Blue Shield on, so that it explains something and it shows the benefit of something. That's what an explanation of benefit is supposed to do. So we're excited about all that, but at the end of the day, we tell the truth and we do the right thing, and we think the chips are going to fall where this is going to result in us having a simpler, more affordable, more accessible health plan for the state of North Carolina, which ultimately is going to have a big impact on the other things that most North Carolinians wake up and think about every morning, which is how we're going to educate kids and protect our streets from crime and pave our roads and all the other core functions of state government. If we're not successful at bending the curve and no longer enabling the medical arms race in this state, 4 things that people wake up thinking about in the morning are going to be negatively affected. And you can take my word for it, and you can take Bill Gates' word for it, you can take Warren Buffett's word for it over 6 years ago.
So, looking at, like, I think it's interesting that you're looking at, that you redesign the card and you're looking at redesigning the explanation of benefits. But if you look at the theory of behavior change, you get sort of a bigger bang for your buck on behavior change if people kind of have more something more invested usually, and when it has to come with dollars and cents, it's cost. So, are you going to be saying to people, like, hey, if you are being more diligent about finding the lowest cost MRI, then, maybe we'll give you a rebate. I don't know if you heard Alex Azar, the new HHS secretary, told a story yesterday, I think it's with the American Hospital Association, about he had to go for a cardiac stress test, and because he's in a high deductible plan, he did a bunch of aggressive shopping around, and he essentially chided hospital leaders yesterday during this meeting when he told this story. Are you going to sweeten this deal? It might be like people might be going, hey, like this is my explanation of benefits, but unless it sort of benefits them, do you really think you're going to get that behavior change?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. We're looking at all kinds of different things. We're approaching this with clarity of thought and trying to put things in the right sequence. That's the only way you can win. Is you have to be clear-minded about what it is you're trying to accomplish, whether it's trying to fix this bankrupt state health plan, insolvent, only behind Illinois, by the way, in terms of per capita and part of their OPEB liability, and or making brownies. It's all about clear-minded and putting things in the right sequence. It's very simple that way. We think we have a shot at this. You look at what's happened to folks, and obviously you can't see through the phone, but every time they pull a credit card out of their pocket, generally speaking, they don't do that unless they know the value and the price of what they're getting. The only card that people will pull out of their pocket is their health plan card, where they don't know the value and the price of what they're getting until even after they consume it. Now, I know for somebody who is a subject matter expert in this, and I will tell you that what I'm about to say to you, Rose, is something I think about all the time. Can it really be this simple? Is this really going to make a difference? Is it really going to change the behavior of what we're trying to fix? We think that the behavioral studies have already occurred when we look at how people are spending their own money. And when they start thinking about this as their own money, we think we've got a shot.
Mm-hmm. And it's a little, I see what you're saying, but if it really did include their own money, like rebates or something, you might have a better shot, because it's a little bit of a leap for folks to, understand that.
It's never been tried before. It's never been tried before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Has any administrator of the state health plan or any treasurer in your history ever talked about or actually redesigned the card to let people know that this is not some insurance company you're sticking it to, you're sticking it to yourself? Has that ever occurred in your history?
No.
Has anybody really put a push to change the explanation of benefits so that people can understand the value and the price of what they got?
Not here, no.
Okay. Has anybody ever put a push in the communications through the HR departments in the state of North Carolina to educate people about the real value of these benefits, both on the health care and the pension? So,
not with this, no, sir. But I'm a nurse. I practiced for a decade, and I will tell you that when I had patients who had a lot more at stake, like they just came out of the hospital after having heart surgery, they were 100 pounds overweight, and yet could not get them to change their diet. it's really hard to get people to change their behavior.
Well, these are the things that we're going to try. We are optimistic. This is no different than some of the announcements that have come out of the consortium between Berkshire, J.P. Morgan, and Amazon, and we're excited about it. People are tired of pulling something out of their pocket and not knowing the value and the price of what they're getting. They're just sick and tired of it. As Popeye once said, they can't stand it because they can't stand it no more. And that's what we're doing. And I will tell you that whether you might want to have a conversation about gas cards or rebates. When the core things that people wake up thinking about in the morning about how the state's going to educate kids and protect them from crime and pave the roads and feed the animals at the zoo and keep the ports going and all the core functions of our state government, when they start realizing what Bill Gates said and Warren Buffett said about this 7 years ago, that the unfunded, the accounting and the unfundedness of the pension and the health care liabilities are going to dominate what happens to education over the next 20 years. We are going to be sending out that message, and it's the correct message. And I believe in the people. I believe that if we push the power away from me and away from our health plan and push that power all the way down to the individual and give them the power to be consumers, and then start driving medical tourism in this state. Dale Hayes Food Line in Salisbury, I learned about this 9 years ago. Somebody called them, and you may already know this, Rose. I'm sure you reported on it before I was a fan of yours. But, they would send people to Singapore for knee surgery with a person of their choice. They get a week on the front, a week on the back of their knee surgery, and then they got a call, I think, from Arizona. And they said, why are you sending people to Singapore? We can do that cheaper here. You don't have to send them to Singapore. So they'd send people to Arizona, a week on the front, a week on the back, take a person of their choice. Then I think they got a call from the hospital in the southeast somewhere and said, why are you sending them to Arizona? We can do that. That's what I'm talking about medical tourism. I love New Hampshire. I love North Dakota. But those states don't have the population center and the medical access that we have in the state such that we can drive medical tourism in North Carolina. We can do this. I'm optimistic about it. And nobody wants to be wrong, but, it's not enough just to say there's a problem. And eventually, and that's my background as a blue-collar person, somebody actually has to fix these things. We can't be Ernest T. Bass, where every problem's a window and every solution's a rock. And we throw the rock, we break the window, we giggle, and we go to the next one. Somebody actually has to fix these problems. If they don't, it's going to negatively affect education, criminal, public roads, public safety, and to kind of to say this, we're in a unique position here, that when we succeed at this, the executive branch is going to succeed. When we succeed at this, the legislative branch is going to succeed. So we're in a really unique situation where when we're successful, regardless of what's happening in politics in the state, in this country, when we're successful in the Treasurer's office, everybody else is successful also.
Just a quick clarification. You're saying about noting like North Dakota and New Hampshire. You mean when you say medical tourism, is this to have people go there or to have people from those states come?
No, totally. I misspoke or you misinterpreted. What I'm saying is we have enough population here in North Carolina.
I see.
And we have enough medical facilities and enough medical offerings that we can drive this within the state of North Carolina, whereas states that aren't as populated as we are
I see.
do not have the option. Thank you for allowing me to clarify that. I mean, we just have enough of everything that we ought to be able to do this successfully.
Gotcha. And are the food line people still sending folks elsewhere for things like for elective procedures such as knee surgery, et cetera?
I have not gotten back up with them, but I hear that they are, but I can't speak for them. But once again, we'll go back to the EOB, and I'll say it. I mean, it's public record. I'll be 60 years old this year. I mean, for most of my life, nobody would ever brag about how much money they saved on anything. It just wasn't the cool thing to do. And now everywhere I go, people brag about how much money they save on everything. I mean, it's just you talk about behavioral change. I'm on I got tailwind on all that stuff. Because it's been going on in society for the last 25 years where people really start bragging about the quality and the price of what they're getting. And the last area to apply this to in their lives is healthcare.
So is it okay? Can I still ask another question?
Let's see if anybody else is on the line, and we'll come back to you. Is that okay, Rose?
Sure.
Do we have anybody else who's got a question for the treasurer?
Yeah, I actually have a follow-up question.
Okay, go ahead, Rand.
So the money, the $3 billion that was transferred in-house, where is the money coming from? Is it from redeeming funds from managers?
Yes, you can tell by our last investment advisory committee as well as the other CAFR and publicly distributed reports that the predominance of our passive strategies have been with two firms called Piedmont Management and BlackRock, and that's where the money's coming from, and I can't give you the percentages right now.
Okay. Sorry, what was the first company's name?
Piedmont Management.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from anyone? And then we'll go back to Rose. Nope. Okay, Rose.
I was just kind of, again, following up on a question I asked you a couple weeks ago about bundled payment. So based into your, idea about folks engaging in medical tourism, you're getting folks to, okay, I have a need. You have all the stuff that goes before. You have the surgery and all the stuff that comes after, and you get a bundled payment for that would hopefully be cheaper than what folks are currently paying. Are you having conversations with folks either at the federal level or at the state level about bundled payment schemes that are seeking to whittle away at costs there at that point in the healthcare delivery system?
We are, and as you can imagine, I'm not the subject matter expert on bundle payments, but every time that we have a conversation about anything associated with state health plan, I know it gets tiring, but always make sure that these terms mean the same thing to everybody who's in the room, and because sometimes they really don't. People have one definition for something, and three other people will have another definition. So whether it's bundle payments, fee for service, value added, capitated, all these things are important and things that we continue to look at. But I will tell you that, as I've said on this call before, much of our life is about yoga. It's like yoga. Every day we breathe and we pay attention to our mat. And we're not going to get distracted off the fact that we're going to take advantage of our largeness, sign contracts that benefit the participants and the taxpayers, turn them into watchdogs. Whatever happens in the state or in the country regarding health care and all these newfangled ways, we're going to pay attention to what we do. And if somebody proves to us that there's a better way of doing something and is willing to back it up with money, as you saw me request a few weeks ago, then we're going to listen. But we're not happy dance people, as you can probably surmise by now, Rose. We don't want to get distracted on the latest newfangled term. We want to make sure that we're doing things that changes the behavior of the problem we're trying to fix. And the problem we're trying to fix is that we are financially unsustainable right now in the state health plan.
One other quick question. On you noted waste fraud abuse. Do you have an idea as to, a number or a percentage that you think we're looking at that you think that we can whittle out in reducing waste fraud abuse? And where are the target areas? Are you focusing more on the healthcare consumers, on the providers, on hospitals, pharma? Where is that? Where do you anticipate is going to be the place that you can recoup something?
The number that I put out before is $300 million, and that's a combination of that's 10%. That's a combination of a lot of different things. We just went through our quarterly review with our PBM. As you know, pharmacy benefit managers are in the news a lot these days. Some people feel like they're getting their barn painted with all kinds of colors about what PBMs represent. We are making sure that we're getting true value out of our pharmacy benefit. We're attempting, and I don't get pharmaceuticals, but we're attempting to actually put at the top of the slip that people get at the drugstore the amount paid by the insurance company. That's another example of making people realize the value of this benefit. And then we're doing all the above, and we're working with hospitals. We're working with obviously our third-party administrator, Blue Cross, and we're working with United Healthcare, who's our Medicare Advantage product. I'm surprised nobody's asked me on this call about the success of our Medicare Advantage program this year, but maybe y'all are just getting ready for next month's call. But there's a report that came out in 2015 that unfunded actuarial liabilities for the state's health plan could be helped at $64 million in savings by shifting people to Medicare Advantage plans. We put a big push on that this year. I'm pleased to report the final numbers aren't in, but we're right at 86 to 87% of our post-65 retirees are now on the Medicare Advantage program. That's a value to them, and that's a value to us, and that's a value to the taxpayers in North Carolina. And that number was zero. That number was zero 6 years ago.
Okay. And what is the current sort of waste, fraud, and abuse, recoupment number?
300 million.
What have you gotten sort of historically, and because you're looking at 300 million?
We don't have that.
Aspirationally.
We don't have that for 2017 yet.
What about for 2016? Do you know?
Well, I'm sighing because it does get exasperating that we pay millions of dollars for data in the state health plan, but it doesn't talk to us. Your question should be readily answered. So if you're sighing, if you're frustrated, if you're not getting an answer, so am I. So we're together.
Okay.
So we're trying to drive down into that. I can tell you that, for example, in pharmacy, we really don't have the numbers from 2016 because in 2016 we were under a different PBM, and we have files. We have, somebody went to the dentist and had a root canal and they got an antibiotic for it. We have the files, but being able to get them to merge and talk to each other to figure out how much better we're doing than we were 2 years ago is something that has not been presented to me. So we're highly frustrated about that. Secondly, and this is a result of the UNC Atrium proposed merger, we're going to start benchmarking. Obviously, people are getting older. People are utilizing health care. When you get older, you utilize more health care. More people getting older, utilizing more health care. So we should be able to have standards that show, what these procedures cost and inflation adjust them so that we can have not just rhetoric or people throwing bombs at each other. We should be able to have honest conversations about what these facilities are doing to actually reduce the cost of health care. And we're a long way away from having that in the state health plan, but it's a wonderful opportunity on top of that.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any additional questions for Treasurer Folwell? Okay, let's go ahead and, go ahead.
I just want to confirm one thing. I'm sorry for bringing this up again and again. I just don't want to get any information wrong. The money that was redeemed from both managers, it was a partial redemption or complete?
Passive.
No, I meant was it just partial or did you
Partial.
Eliminate their entire mandate? Sorry?
Partial. We're just a third of the way through.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. If no one else has any questions, we'll go ahead and let Treasurer Folwell give some closing comments.
Well, listen, thank you for your interest in this. I know that every month all of our invitees can't attend, but we're very serious about helping you do your jobs. We're sort of in the same boat here. We know that these are issues that are sort of invisible to a lot of individuals until something goes wrong. And so we're excited about the partnership that we have with all of you. As I stated when I came in and did the first one of these over a year ago, our attempt while I'm treasurer is to be a non-FOIA agency and to get folks the information they need, and we think we've done a great job at that over the first year, and we intend to figure out how to keep doing that in the future. These are important issues, and we're trying to find things that make them interesting to both you and your readers.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you next month.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.